Hello and welcome to the Dear Infosec podcast from the Information Security Forum, where we hear about, talk about, and sometimes even solve some of the many problems that practitioners face day to day. If you have a problem and need someone to help, then you can contact us at dearinfosec@securityforum.org. Just drop us a line and we'll get right on it. This is the first of a two-part episode about a problem actually probably few of us have had cause to tackle in its entirety, but instead shows how someone else solved a particular issue. But to do that, they drew on approaches that InfoSec folks employ and call on regularly, I would imagine. That's community and communication. And what we're talking about is the creation of a computer emergency response team for Jersey, one of the Channel Islands that sits between the UK and France. It's actually become the Jersey Cybersecurity Centre now, but Jersey is self-governing, home to lots of finance organisations and many tens of thousands of companies as well are registered there. So it has some interesting problems and lots of security demands, I would imagine, as well. Here to talk about how it was done, how the CERT, how that Cybersecurity Centre was set up, is Matt Palmer, the head of that organisation. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Good to have you here. I just wondered if, for the folks that don't know, and I'm not sure everyone would know, can you sum up what a CERT does in a few words? Quite a tricky question to open with.
I can. It's a tricky one and an easy one because, of course, CERT as an acronym has always stood for Computer Emergency Response Team, which is actually quite an old term. Dates back to the early days of computing, and it's really about the idea that when something goes wrong, you have to have a structured process and capability in order to address it, respond, and resolve it. Most businesses will be familiar with this. You usually have somebody who deals with instant response and recovery within a security team. It's morphed a bit since then. So CERT became CCERT, or Computer Security Instant Response Team, and now very often, certainly at a national level, it's a cybersecurity centre. And that's really reflecting the fact that we're a little bit like a fire service in that whilst people often think fire engines with flashing lights driving around and putting out fires, most of the work really is educational. It's preparatory. It's trying to make sure that incidents don't happen in the first place. Fire staff spend most of the time in the fire station practicing and exercising, and we do the same. So very much, actually, it's not just about that emergency response bit. It's also about how do you prepare, how do you get ready, how do you make sure that the incidents don't happen, but that when they do, and if they do, you're really ready for them.
Yeah, because I think these days it's much more likely that they will happen and you do have to be ready. And certainly the ISF has talked a lot about resilience and organisations preparing and just getting back to working. But also here is Paul Watts, one of the regulars on the podcast. Paul, hello again. Have you had much dealing with CERTs and those cybersecurity centres at all?
Yeah, I did. Certainly back in the days when I was working in critical national infrastructure, we had regular engagements with UK CERT, which I think was established around 2013 time, so still very formative. Was very much as Matt described. They in the emergency they would parachute in with the blue flashing lights on their heads and do what
Blues
they
and
needed
twos.
to do. But that kind of relates. Going back to what Matt was saying, I think over time, as CERT got ingested into the UK National Cybersecurity Centre, it's a balance of both preventative and reactive services now, and it's also trying very hard to transcend both the public and the private sector. Whereas historically, a lot of these were very grounded and centred in terms of supporting government departments, but we recognise that things are a lot more interconnected in these days, and that conversation between public and private is really important. And I guess Matt will probably talk a little bit about your journey there with Jersey a little bit later on. I should also just say a big thanks to Matt, who gave me some travel tips for visiting the island. I've recently just come back. You'll be pleased to know that I squandered a huge amount of my ill-gotten gains into the island. I pretty much did everything you told me to, and now I'm exhausted. But it was a great long weekend, so thanks again for all.
Different kind of emergency, I suppose, that response that was, but useful all the same. But I think the CERT the first CERT came about after, was it the 1988 Morris worm, which was definitely a big incident that probably catalysed all that. I don't know, for Jersey, was there a particular event, or was you just sort of on the horizon, you could see these things are getting much more serious, we just need a better way to organise how we respond?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you mentioned a bit, and Paul mentioned a bit about Jersey. It's got some natural attributes. Yeah, well, it's financial services industry, and obviously the warmest weather in the British Isles. And obviously, hopefully, everybody who listens to this will be inspired to come and visit. And if you want tips too, yeah, I'm very happy to help out. It's really about understanding that with whatever your strengths are, come vulnerabilities. Yeah. And you need to be able to resolve those. So back about 10 years ago, I and a few others set up an organisation called the Channel Islands Information Security Forum, which was about bringing together the professional community in Jersey and Guernsey and really giving people just space to talk. And this came after I moved and realised that there was only really a handful of security specialists we could find. And that's now, I think, 560 strong as an organisation. So, it's really grown over the last 10 years. But in about 2017, the government of Jersey said, hold on a second, look, this is a real thing. We need to deal with this. There are real risks. There are real opportunities for us. So they wrote a cybersecurity strategy and said, we should have a CERT, which is a great idea, of course, but thinking it through, working out exactly what that looks like and how do you execute that, particularly when you're really small, it's a challenge that many companies have as well. You don't have unlimited resources. How do you work that out, and how do you create something to deal with that? So I joined in 2021 as the director of the CERT, and we've developed it since into Jersey Cybersecurity Centre with a small team of 7, really to protect Jersey from the sort of cyber threats that we see today.
Yeah. And is there a model for a CERT or a cybersecurity centre, or is it, I guess there's, not standards as such, but is it sort of, you can cut it to suit the cloth, I suppose?
It's really interesting in that when I've gone in as a corporate CISO before, it's always felt like you are trying to understand the organisation and build something that reflects the organisation, but that you have a set of tools already available for you to use. Yeah. And they're quite well tested tools, yeah, and you can pick and choose from them and you can adapt them, but they're there. I think with this it's been quite different. There are some existing tools, but it has felt quite a lot like you're reinventing a slightly different wheel to all the other wheels. I think we've got something to learn there about how we set these up, because I think the establishment of incident response capabilities is not as mature as cybersecurity generally. So we have benefited from the lessons from others, but we've also found in going back and sharing our journey this year. I'm just back from a conference in Japan where a colleague of mine and myself, we've been sharing our journey, that actually we're finding some new and innovative ways to do things, ploughing our own furrow, maybe more than I realised that we would have to initially. So hopefully we can learn from that and also try and help those who follow.
Yeah, I find that surprising because I guess I thought, I assume you guys do a lot of threat intelligence, threat monitoring, horizon scanning and things. But yeah, I'm curious about the way that maybe tools and ways to do that aren't as well developed. Paul, have you found that sort of just, I don't know, in your own work, just talking to the security centres or certs and things like that, just, whether you get that feeling as well that they are, it is not quite a solved science yet?
I think the conversations that I've had with various cybersecurity centres around the world is that context is everything, and there is a challenge that's faced when setting up an emergency response team that's quite transcendental, in that you're trying to be something for everybody. So, when you're setting something up like a security operations center or a response team in a particular organization, you've got a very narrow focus and context, enumeration's easy and so forth. When you're trying to be all things to all people, you have to be quite careful with that. And again, Matt, you've probably got some stories on this, in that you want to be quite cross-cutting, but you've got to go down to a level of detail as well. But you don't want to imbalance that. You need to be alluring for everybody. You've also probably got the challenge of upsell and cross-sell. So people need to be compelled to want to use your service, and that leans back into the idea that as certs have evolved, it's not just about the reactionary stance that they have to take now. It's about prevention. It's about engagement with the board. It's about people and process and technology. And that's definitely an evolution from the days of Carnegie Mellon's first cert over in the States. So things have definitely moved on. But yeah, Matt, have you come across this when you've been establishing the centre in Jersey, just trying to be all things to all people? What challenges has that given you in the short term?
I mean, you're exactly right, Paul. And that's the challenge: is the expectation when you're delivering a public function is that you will deliver for your entire constituency. And just because our constituency is quite wide, so it includes the 110,000 people who live in Jersey. It includes the 30,000 odd companies that are established in Jersey. It includes all the public sector of Jersey because we have our own telcos, we have our own, internet service providers, we have our own electricity, water, gas, ports, all of this stuff. Yeah, healthcare. It's not the NHS; it's done locally. So all of that is potentially in scope, and then you've got to balance. Where do we focus, and how do we focus on risk? So the process that you'd go through inside an organisation, saying where are our risks and where do we focus, but trying to do that without forgetting, the other people that also need your services. That's the balance. And I think one of the compromises that we've had to make is to recognise that actually, with a small team, we can't provide a retail service to everybody. Yeah. So we can focus on some of those higher level of risks, but we've also got to find scalable ways of communicating with the general public. So that's led us to focus quite heavily on things like social media and a cybersecurity awareness month program in October each year, which allow us to reach that sort of wider audience, but without a series of drop-in visits every 5 minutes that will be really difficult to sustain. At the same time, we focus on the higher risk areas and the critical infrastructure and these sorts of providers.
Yeah, I guess you're quite busy because again, my assumption was it would be more for the larger organisations on Jersey, but like you say, firefighters spend a lot. As that analogy, they spend a lot of time talking to the public, and I guess that's part of what you do as well.
One of the assumptions that we got first off was that we were here to provide a service to the government, and of course, we are absolutely not here to provide a service to the government. The government actually has instant response capabilities of its own, as it should. Yeah, we're here to provide a service to the island and to manage the island's risks. I mean, there are a lot of parallels. It's very different to being in an internal organisation, but the same thing I had as a corporate CISO. You start with that expectation that you're there to deliver a service to corporate IT, and then you have to kind of persuade people and persuade the board and help them understand that actually, no, you're there to protect the organisation as a whole. And for us, it's that ecosystem that is the island that we're trying to protect.
And that's quite a broad remit as well, because I think the point is well made. We talk about the first 90 days in role. What's the CISO doing? Learning the organisation, trying to understand strategic intent, and then thinking about how they add value. The ambiguity of that when you're setting something up for Jersey as an island and you're looking at private, public, and everything in between, that must make that quite challenging. So I'm guessing you spent quite a lot of time kind of on the front foot, and this is, I think, where the ISF got involved actually, just trying to sound out and sense check and understand where everybody was on their particular journeys, and then think about what your strategic intentions would be over and above the Department for the Economy's probably initial views, which I think is where you were born. I don't know whether you're still there or whether you're now an arm's length body or not. Maybe we should come to that as well. But I'm guessing that presented some pretty unique challenges, really, trying to be all things to all people.
Yeah, it did. And this is one of the reasons, actually, that we did end up working together, because one of the things I realised straight off is you can't engage individually with a community that big and with that many different points of view and needs. So we took the approach early on that rather than try and sort of academically explain cybersecurity to everybody and go and sort of pitch what we are trying to do, instead what we do is we try and get everybody in a room together and work through real life incident scenarios and really help them learn what it feels like to be in a cyber incident. And in the part of that, they get to ask these questions. Okay, when would we interact with a CERT? When would we report an incident? What sort of things, or what sort of help would we need as part of this incident? And then people can think through the emotional journey that they go on during an incident as well, because incidents can be incredibly traumatic. Yeah, for cybersecurity professionals as well as those who are running organisations. So that's been really helpful. So with that, what we did was we've run a series of incident exercises, including our early ones, which we ran jointly with the ISF. Thank you for that, Paul. This was really well received and really helped us to sort of benchmark where we are as an island and the levels of expectation. And we've followed that through since with some internal and external exercises. And we did one last year, and we were sat there, and the number one comment was just how far people have moved on in their understanding and their appreciation of this and the challenges of it. So we moved on from really simplistic answers like the CERT's here to fix everything, or you should call the government or whatever else it is, into much more sort of sophisticated responses, really understanding the different roles that people have to play. So it has been really valuable. It's still, an uphill battle to reach everybody. But we're getting to that sort of 80-20 point of being able to communicate with the people who matter most.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that sort of, was there not a problem as such, but just sort of that proving your worth kind of thing? Or was it sort of once you got talking to people, it was kind of obvious what you could bring? Because I guess people have some experience of incidents, but not as deeply as you guys do.
I mean, I guess one of my concerns going in was given that our role is to focus on the response element, the proof of value in terms of public investment would only really be visible if there was an incident, and at the same time, you don't want there to be an incident.
Right.
So I've always been conscious of that balance. That's true of anyone doing cybersecurity, because of course successful cybersecurity is invisible. It doesn't affect users. Nobody notices it. There aren't any incidents, etc. It's when it fails that it's visible. So you don't want it to fail. At the same time, you do need it to be visible. And I think we were. One of the things that affected that early on was we had a couple of major incidents that affected public sector organisations. So, for example, we had a ransomware attack on one of our local schools, which was a good opportunity for the team to go and provide the sort of active support that sometimes it's hard for CERTs to provide. And of course, we had Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And you might think, well, why on earth is that relevant to a small island like Jersey? What you have to realise is that along with the UK and other big countries, we're on that list of unfriendly nations that passed the Kremlin desks. So we're on the radar here. Mainly, I think, because of the financial services sort of industry that we have in Jersey. So we're in a position really of knowing that people are aware of us and they don't always have friendly intent. So we had to stand up. We did stand up a whole emergency response to that across the public sector, because of course that was about us coordinating with other functions, including things like immigration and welfare, well-being type services and customs and these sorts of services, in order to address the different aspects of this. So how do you deal with displaced Ukrainians coming to live in Jersey? How do you deal with the cyber risk associated with hybrid warfare threats on the financial services sector? How do you deal with the need to implement sanctions and all of this? And actually, I still remember going over to Ukraine to get a family member back, and I came back with 4 or 5 others facilitated by Jersey Customs and Immigration Service right at the beginning of this. So I found that I was in this odd position, actually, sat doing my job in a hotel in Warsaw for 3 weeks, waiting for a visa whilst the Russian troops were pouring over the border. It does definitely focus your minds when you go there and you see the human aspect of this, and the displacement of individuals and what that does to people's lives. But I think to know that as cyber defenders, we're all a part of this, and we're a part of making sure those well-being issues don't arise locally in our own areas and in our own companies and organisations. I think that's really valuable. It kind of shows, it doesn't just prove the value, it proves to us why this is a sort of mission-driven career.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've certainly heard that from a lot of other people in Infosec. It's just sort of why they do it and why they do it. I think the last recording we did, we asked the question: is it a lifestyle? Is it a job? And it's definitely a lifestyle. I think. Thanks for listening. We're going to cut this one short here, as this episode runs quite long compared to some of the others that we've put together. The second part of this one dives much more into the issues around running a CERT and explores what comes next now that the centre is established. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a moment of the conversation.